Well, if you've ever struggled with your relationship with money, you are not going to want to miss this conversation with Linda Parmar. She's a recovery coach specializing in financial recovery, and she's going to go deep into her story of addiction to alcohol as well as her story of addiction to spending. She's been able to work out a plan that's helping her get out of that situation, and she's going to share her top tips with us today. So here we go, Linda Parmar.
Here, we want to show you what's possible in the world of sobriety. We introduce you to the various tools, programs, and resources available because there are way more options than you may even realize. We want you to find the one that works for you.
And we do it through people who share their pathway to recovery and will help you find your path to freedom. Because getting sober can feel hard enough. You don't have to do it alone. I'm Sarah Roberts.
And I'm Roger DeVoe, and this is Sobriety Starts Here.
Oh my goodness, Linda Parmar. We are tackling one of the toughest topics today and one of the most exciting and interesting and one of those topics that is so relatable to everybody. We are covering money in recovery. Welcome, Linda.
Thanks. I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited. I keep trying to not say I'm so excited because every time I have a conversation with someone, I truly am so excited to be chatting with them. So I am so excited to thank you for spending some time with us today because we're going to go deep on the whole money story. It's something that so many of us have struggled with either, while we were in active addiction or after if we've gotten sober. And it's just that topic that everyone relates to. So I want to understand from you. So first off, you are a recovery coach specializing in financial recovery. Yes. And I want to know, what is the experience of working with you? How do people go deeper? And who is your coaching for?
Sure. So with the coaching, I think overall what I'd like to let my clients know is my coaching comes from a very non-judgmental, very safe environment. One thing that I learned from money so much is that there's so much shame and guilt surrounding money. So I think that there's always such a huge stumbling block for people to get over just to even talk to me about money. So I think that that's, first and foremost, this is a very safe environment. I have no judgments. I have my own story, which we'll get into later, where there was so much shame, so much guilt. So yes, what I pretty much like to do is really uncover what's happening with people with money. So, with recovery, like we quit drinking, we quit doing the drugs, that sort of thing. But, there's so much more work to that, right? So even though we quit drinking, we quit drugging, once you get into recovery, there's so much more to that. So
it's kind of like the difference between sobriety and recovery. Like we can stop drinking, but that doesn't mean that we're really recovering.
Exactly.
And I imagine there's so many metaphors, and there's so much dovetailing and what I'm trying to say is just the way that we're addicted to whatever substance we're addicted to, I know that we can use money in a very similar way.
Oh, it's huge. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times when I, especially dealing with women in recovery, men might have it as well with kind of big ticket items, but women in recovery, we love that feeling of belonging. We like to fill those gaps with, at one point it was drinking and drugs. And, then the overspending comes into play. And your closet is full of things that you're never going to wear, and it's just that constant pulling of needing some sort of comfort. And some people find that with retail therapy. You hear the words retail therapy constantly.
Absolutely. And it sounds to me like it's just, again, filling a hole
exactly.
with something other than what comes from inside.
That's exactly right.
Okay. So if somebody wants to hire you to be their recovery and financial coach, what are the steps that people take?
Sure. Well, I do have my website, lindaparmar.com, and I do have people to sign up for a consultation on that website. So really, we just work out a time that's going to work for you, and then we talk about kind of what my process is. So kind of long story short, sorry.
That's okay.
Long story short, what my process is at first is we'll get within really, your money story is what our first step is. So, when it comes to, like, a lot of people will come to me like, oh my God, Linda, I have so much credit card debt. Like, what am I supposed to do about it? At one point, we're going to get into your credit card debt, and what you're going to do about it, because there's obviously steps you need to take to kind of get the monkey off the back. But what we really need to touch base on first of all is, how did you get in that debt? What's happening to, create all this stress around money, so it's, writing out your money story and really learning about what happened with you with money. So, people, we're only taught what our parents really have taught us and society has taught us. So money is never anything we're taught about, when we're in school, when we're anywhere, you constantly don't know what's going on with money. It's this crazy energy that's, ruling the world, and nobody has any idea what to do with it. And we're all just kind of frantically running around.
You're so right. And it was funny, when I went back to business school later in life, I felt almost ridiculous in the fact that I had no real idea of how money was created and how it multiplied and how it worked and how it operated. And then what I found really fascinating is, here in Canada, you're Canadian as well, our law, the Fed is very different from what goes on in Canadian financial institutions with our ombudsmans and the way that it's set up. With the Bank of Canada. So I find it really interesting that it's different as far as how money is created and how it works in both of those countries. Yes. But at the same time, that fundamental energy behind it as to why we spend the way we do, what is our money story, because we're not taught about all of those rules and regulations around what's going on with the financial institutions. That's kind of secondary. I mean, it's interesting to learn that stuff, but I think what you're saying is we want to get deep on our beliefs around money. And you're right, They really do come from our parents.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, like, your parents were taught what they were taught, and it's, multi-generational, what's passed down. And it just turns into, it's with money. What I've learned is it's fight or flight, and people are just constantly in this, fight or flight mode, and everybody's just needs to, it is an energy, and it is something that you need to work on. But I think within my money coaching, what I really try to teach my clients is how to embrace money, how to make it a positive energy within your experience. Because if you're not doing anything positively and embracing it and being proud of it, you can't be financially successful. If you're constantly thinking like, oh my God, like, I hate money, it's the root of all evil. Well, we're not going to get anywhere with that, right? So it's kind of, why do you think it's evil? And then let's build on that. Yes, we're going to talk about your debt, but let's talk about why you think money is evil. What's happened? What's going on to make you, what's your experience with that?
I find that really fascinating, because I think a lot of people have that belief passed down generationally that money is the root of all evil, that materialism and consumerism is ruining the world. And so what do you, we'll stay here for a moment. What do you share with people when their belief system is that money is the root of all evil, it's dirty, it's bad, it's negative? How would you as a coach help us to turn that belief system around?
What I would do is I would definitely dig into, again, why they feel that way. So we would really, I think that you can't really move on without that awareness of what's really going on. And a huge part of my practice is forgiveness. So I have one session that's specifically about forgiveness, when of course my clients are ready to do that. But, for example, like, money is dirty, money's evil, that sort of thing. They may have experienced some trauma within their lives with money. Money can be very traumatic for people. And I'm learning that more and more every time that I'm talking to people. And I have that story as well with trauma with money, which is why I'm so drawn to this. But with that, it's, you're just wanting to forgive whatever happened, and really kind of getting to the root of for me, it was my parents. For me, it was, different members of my family that really made money a horrible thing for me and a horrible experience. And I was never going to be able to move on if there wasn't forgiveness attached to that.
Well, I can't wait to kind of dive more into your story. And we're going to do that in a moment. First,
Sure.
though, so when people want to work with you, what's the usual time that you end up working with somebody? Like, are we talking a year that we work together? Is it a few months? What's the average?
Sure. So what usually happens is we have what's called the core process. So the core process is from beginning to end. We're talking about your money story. We are getting to a place where hopefully, the forgiveness piece is really key. And then from there, there's a few other sessions. We really talk about your financial goals. How are you going to get there? Once we kind of push all that stuff aside. So the core process is 4 sessions. And within those sessions, they go from, an hour to an hour and a half. We do a conference Zoom call, just as we're doing today. But there is homework attached to that as well. There's a ton of accountability when it comes to what you want to get out of the coaching. I can coach you, but it's, there is some homework attached to that, including your money story and kind of what your memories of money have been and your goals and that sort of thing. So there is a lot of accountability, which I think obviously has to be with coaching for you to move on and be successful.
Mm-hmm. And then what about actionable strategies? Things like how we go about, let's say, clearing our credit card debt, or what is the best thing to do first? Like, I think so many of us are like, should I pay off my student loan? Should I pay off my credit card debt? Should I pay off the car payment that I have? Should I buy out the lease? Like, I think, so are all of these things covered? And is it kind of a unique approach depending on who you're working with?
Absolutely. Everybody's totally different. So yes, we kind of, again, I talk about the monkey on your back because, there's that thing that keeps you up all night. You're not going to sleep. There's, that sort of thing because debt can be quite stressful. Yeah. Again, during our process, I believe that with my clients, we get to a point of we're not so much in that, panicked state anymore where we can actually deal with the debt and everything like that with open eyes now. So we have a look at the financial picture. Absolutely. So that's where it comes down to how much do you have in credit card debt, like your overall financial picture, right? Do you have retirement savings? Do you own your house? Do you, there's so many different strategies that we can put into place to help. One thing I find, which is a part of my story is, which is probably perfect for this, is I've worked in the financial industry for 17 years. So I work as a financial advisor. I can put together a financial plan and, a plan for you to get out of debt. But what I was finding within my financial advisor position at my 9-to-5 job was people would come back to me like a month later going like, oh my God, like I can't keep up with this. I don't know what's going on. Like I couldn't get to the root of what was going on. Like what was really stopping these people from working out their plan. And they'd come back a year later in tears and just so much shame and guilt. And it was horrible to watch. So I just knew I had to kind of reach out my arm and kind of figure out how to help people on more of a spiritual level and help them that way with money.
I think that's so important to point out because it is operating at a spiritual level. I think that the way that we spend money, the way that we view money and feel about money really comes from a much deeper place than just that idea of, you get some money and you buy something. Like it's not that simple. So I think it was really important for you to be able to go deeper with people because you were seeing that creating these financial plans is one thing, but if we don't have a healthy relationship with money,
exactly,
all the plans in the world aren't going to do anything for us.
That's exactly right.
So if people want to go further with you, head over to lindaparmar.com. And I think there's a quiz there that you can answer and find out a little bit more too.
Yeah, for sure. So there's the money type quiz that I have on my website. So I did my training through the Money Coaching Institute for my money coaching certification. And my teacher there, Deborah Price, who is so inspirational when it comes to money. She's actually made archetypes when it comes to money, like what kind of archetype you are, which really gets into, how you feel about money. And then the money types really give me my cues on kind of what you need for money coaching. So you'd go through the quiz and sort of say, there's a whole bunch of words on there, and it kind of says, is that how you feel about money? Are you anxious about money? Are you excited about money? Really just pinpoints kind of what your relationship with money is.
All right. So I think that's a perfect place to now get right into your story. I want you to take us all the way back to childhood. And I ask all of my guests pretty much to do this with us. And here, I think it's going to be really fascinating for you to share with us in childhood what the money story was growing up. But also, of course, I want it to lead to your drinking as well. I want to uncover how alcohol played a role in your life, and then when, of course, you decided to quit drinking, and then all of the rest of it. So the microphone has been passed over to you, Linda. Here we go.
Fabulous. So I think when it comes to the money story, I'll go, for sort of into that first. With my money story, my first memory, and this is a project that I do with my clients, is what's your first memory of money? My first memory of money was stealing money from one of my cousins when I was over at her place in Vancouver. She had a $50 bill on her dresser, and I took it and I hid it. And I remember like everybody getting so upset, like, where's this money? And I just kept so quiet about it. And I remember my first memory of money was so much shame and guilt bang on right away. Like, I think I was 6, something like that. Yeah.
And you stole $50.
I know.
And
Crazy.
what did you do with it?
I gave it back because the shame and the guilt, and I was just scared, and I don't even know why I did it. But obviously there was something, now that I think back to what my money story is, I definitely have been taught from a very early age to hide anything to do with money. So kind of jumping forward to my first memory of money, money was always a huge issue in my house. I had my dad who worked, and he was a hard worker, and he just, went to work every day. And I also had my mom who was also a very hard worker, and both of them had jobs. And it just was always as a memory as a kid. And I lived in an alcoholic home, so that also has a huge thing to do with my money story. So then we have a lot of emotions and stuff. So my mom always had a lot of, there's a lot of lying and deceit around money. So there was, there was a lot of overspending. And then there would come that time where it would be like, oh, well, I got to come clean to dad about kind of how much money we owe and that sort of thing. And it almost seemed like it was probably every 4 or 5 months, there would be this huge blow up fight. Mm-hmm. About money, and how could she spend this money, and you're lying to me. And then it would be kind of this like, well, how are we going to fix this? And it just, and there was some physical things involved with that, because of course we have alcohol involved with that. So there was some trauma around that. There was fighting over money physically. So
can I ask, did both of your parents drink alcohol?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, both of my parents are in recovery now, but my mom was, she started recovering when I think it was about 16, and my dad, I think it was about 5 or 6 years after that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's hard.
Mm-hmm. And you're 6 years old. Are you an only child, or do you have siblings?
I have a sibling, so that's also where it comes in, where I was so protective all the time. So I was either super protective over my sister and trying to keep her away from even noticing what was happening with the fighting, or else there was me trying to protect my mom, because my mom was such a safe place for me, and oh my God, how could my dad be so mad at my mom? And it was just this vicious circle that happened all the time as a kid. So my theory of money was, to mostly either hide it, or, the compulsive spending and that sort of thing is something I was brought up with as well. So that was brought into my life. So that's what I did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all right. So you're 6 years old, you steal $50, you have to give it back.
Yes.
How does that come about that you give it back?
I think that after probably about a day or so of the family getting so upset about like, where the hell is this money? I just put it back on her dresser. So I actually didn't even come clean about it at first. It was like, oh, if I just put it back, maybe nobody will notice. But yes, it was. And then I finally, oh my God, the money's back. Linda, did you take the money? And yeah, I remember there was a lot of trouble there. That's for sure.
And so you say a lot of trouble. Did you get grounded for that? I mean, you were 6 years old. What did trouble look like?
Well, we were at family members over in Vancouver, so trouble didn't look like what it would have looked like at home, thank goodness. But even then, like I remember at home when I was a little bit older, I stole money from my mom's dresser and hid it within my dresser, and then it was like after the pattern, I think it was pretty clear who took the money. But it took my mom a while again to really like, why are you stealing this money? And I don't think I really even knew, but yeah, it came with probably spanking, and there was the good old wooden spoon back in the day, so that sort of thing. But yeah, it's something I was taught at a very early age that kind of just hide it and be very secretive about it.
So when you're in your, say, tween and teen years, when a lot of us as girls, I know I did, I would go to the mall, my mom would give me some money, or I'd get babysitting money, and I was allowed to spend some of that. How did that all look for you in sort of those early formative years with money, when maybe you had your own?
Yes, and that came at a very early age. I think I started my first job when I was 12, worked at the local hockey arena and in the concession there. And I started making money quite early. Like you say, babysitting. I was babysitting like almost every night. I constantly spent my money. It didn't matter what it was on. It was like, I was very proud that in my grade 12 year, I was voted best dressed.
Nice.
Well, I don't know, because it was, me all those years spending so much money when I really shouldn't have been. I should have been saving my money. And that was something I was never taught, because there was always such a panic about not having enough money. Like, what's saving money? Like, what? Why would you do that?
What a dichotomy. We're so concerned about not having enough, and then we just spend whatever we have instead of saving it. Like, it seems so ridiculously simple a formula. You need money, save the money you make, and then you have money.
Yes.
And yet we don't do these things. And I laughed when you said, you were voted best dressed. That's such a good feeling for a young girl to have that vote of confidence from your friends. But really underlying that, I mean, it wasn't healthy what was going on. You were spending all of your money to impress other people, I suppose, or to try to fill something inside of yourself so that you felt that on the outside, everything looked put together.
Absolutely. And I think too, that's where, I get into my college years. As soon as I graduated, I lived in a really small town. As soon as I graduated, I left town and went to Victoria here on Vancouver Island, and I got student loans. And from there, this is where it starts to get really intertwined with my drinking story, because I started drinking in grade 11. When it comes to that, like, I think that it was a little bit of a, there was a lot of people drinking in like grade 7 when I went to school, but grade 11 is kind of where I started.
And do you remember your first drink?
Oh God, yeah.
Can you tell us?
Yeah, I definitely had, it was Canada Coolers. Remember, those were the best. And it was kiwi. And I know, I think about it now. I drank the whole 2 liter and was downtown, again, living in a very small town, and downtown just making an absolute ass of myself. And honestly, I don't think I stopped that behavior until probably till I got married, and that was when I was 30. So yeah, it's so
when you say making a complete ass of yourself, so you are getting blackout drunk, you are drinking to get wasted.
Yeah. And honestly, even now in my recovery, I still kind of laugh about it because like my theory back then, and even, a few years into my recovery was like, well, isn't that why people drink?
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't it because why we drink is because we want to get just absolutely hammered. I blacked out constantly. That was a huge part of my story. And having parents in recovery, I always kind of in the back of my head knew something was wrong, but I just didn't, I just kept going with it because it was just filling so much of a void.
So I want to ask then, when did your parents get into recovery? Because you've kind of talked about them drinking, and that was kind of chaotic in the home. And then you started drinking, but then they were in recovery. So how old were you when they got sober?
My mom, I would have been in grade 11. So it was a bumpy ride for my mom when she was going into recovery. So I think that's when she would have been like the last time that she drank, but she was definitely kind of off and on for probably a couple years. I'll never forget one of the main things that was hard for me one time is that I would, as a young kid, and that would have been grade 10, not really young, I guess, but she'd be making dinner, and I would, behind her back, I would try to sniff her glass to see what was in her glass, what she was drinking. Like, it was, for a couple of years, it was, we weren't really sure if mom was drinking, wasn't she drinking? Sometimes she hid it well, sometimes she didn't, but I was very proud, and when I was in grade 11, that she hit a bottom. It was scary, but it was so brave of her to, pick herself up and be there for her kids. And I was really proud of her, and how hard it was. My dad, his drinking was, there was the fighting between the two of them. But my dad overall, like, was pretty jovial, like a little bit like me when I was drinking, very jovial. Like there was nothing crazy going on per se. But it was really hard on my mom to, still have alcohol in the home. And my dad was a logger. So he felled trees for a living, and he would come home and have his beer every night and, like fall asleep in his chair. And that was just what he did. And there was a couple moments, and he just decided, what, I want a different life. I want, better for myself. And it was awesome having two parents in recovery. It was the greatest gift that I was ever given. And yeah, I wonder why I didn't quit drinking sooner, but I can't really.
No, and we all have to go through what we've got to go through. I find it interesting that right when your mom is going through the process to get sober, you start drinking.
I know. Hey, yeah, that's a good point.
I find that really fascinating. Like, how does the psyche work? That it's like, well, mom's now okay. Because you started in grade 11, which is, somewhat normal. I would say I was grade 10. A lot of the people I'm talking to are grade 7, grade 8, grade 9, grade 10. It's kind of normal. It's slightly on the later side. And it's almost like you didn't start drinking really early, like 9 or 10 years old or 11. But you started at, 16, 17. Really interesting, when your mom had already gotten sober. So how long after your mom got sober did your dad get sober?
I think it was about six or 7 years.
Oh, so a good chunk of time.
Good chunk of time. Yeah, most definitely.
You weren't living at home at all anymore.
I was on and off. So I had moved out, and I think I had come back home once in between that time. But yeah, it was, I'm just trying to think back on when exactly it was, but maybe my time's off a little bit. But yeah, I think about 6 or 7 years that they were kind of the timing between the two of them.
And are they still married today?
Absolutely.
I'm glad for that.
I know, you don't hear a lot of that. They had me also a big part of it is that my mom was 15 when she got pregnant with me, and my dad was 17. So, there's pictures of me as a baby with the black light kiss poster hanging over my crib. And it's just like, so, and me, like the Labats, kind of all these cases, and there's me like drinking out of an empty bottle. That was my childhood. So
Oh,
it was just
man.
like, they were kids having kids. Like,
Mhm.
they had no idea what to do. And it was just sort of, they were thrown into it. And I'm very proud of them for how they've accomplished. And,
Oh
you
my
know,
gosh, it's almost like in a way you grew up together,
oh, we
really.
totally did. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
And your sibling, your sister is younger than you?
Yes, my sister is 2 years younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yeah, and she's in recovery from a few things, but yeah, she's doesn't have anything to do with drinking, drugs, none of that. So yeah,
Wow,
we're
how
fine right now.
impressive. I'm proud of all of you as well. That's a real success story in a family. We don't normally see everybody pull their lives together and really recover in such a healthy, whole way. That's amazing.
Yes,
So
thank you.
imagine though, considering your parents are 15 and 17, like what is their money story? Their money story is, how are we going to afford formula and diapers and getting our, having this child? And then another one a few years later. I mean, that's got to be that's a big part, I'm sure, of their money story, which is just scarcity. There isn't a
That is
lot of money.
so true. And my dad, especially when we were that age, and my dad was the only one working. My mom wasn't working at the time. She didn't start to work until we were in school. But yeah, it was fight or flight with money, and it continued to be that way so much, just because they were never taught anything. Like, it's again, it's not their fault. It's, when you get into that situation, and it's just kind of getting some understanding. And that's where I'm so glad that there's outlets now that can help people with that, because I would have loved that for my parents, so that the strain of money didn't rule their lives all the time.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Yeah.
All right. So you're drinking now, you're drinking regularly to black out, and you're
Oh,
in your
yeah.
30s. So
Yeah.
have you gotten married? What's happened in your life between sort of 16 and 30?
I would say that, blackout drunk constantly. So that's where, kind of going back to when I left home, got a student loan, was going to school. I was going out every single night of the week, blackout drunk constantly, so hungover going to school. If I went to school, I blew all my money on alcohol and clothes.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have anything to do with, I did graduate with one diploma or a certificate in office administration. And, me and my girlfriends who met there often laugh about that. But yeah, it was, and that was the story of all of us, like feeling like we were drunk when we showed up for tests the next day. Like, it was just, I did not stop that behavior. So like it went on and on and on. I went traveling. I lived over in Australia for a while, and constant binge drinking, constant just sort of drinking all the time. And when I came home from Australia, I met who is my husband now. Being the alcoholic that I was, my husband is very straight-laced, very just like didn't have alcohol in his past, didn't have anything to do with drugs. And I just weaved my way in there, and my husband became my drinking partner. So it was about 7 years of kind of heavy drinking. And he, I'd say probably the last 4 years is when he was doing it with me. But yeah, it was, we drank a lot of alcohol, and he was easy to stop when it got so bad, and I didn't want my kids to, I have 2 girls, and they've had a hard time. They're my stepdaughters, but I hate calling them that because they're my kids. So yeah, it was, they've had bad experiences with alcohol. And I remember my oldest, I remember her seeing me drunk, because we would usually drink after the kids went to bed. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, like I need to get my shit together. I need that's not fair to her. I need to be here for my family. I need to just, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. It's that saying that's so cliche, but it's so true. I was so broken. I was so done.
Yeah. Oh, it is so cliche, but it hits the mark.
It really does.
Sick and tired of being sick and tired every single day. Yeah. I think we all get that. I mean, honestly, one of the biggest things when I'll say to people, what's the best thing? It's like no hangovers.
Oh,
not
God.
being sick anymore. So is your husband in recovery, or did he just drink with you as a drinking buddy? And and then he was able to quit drinking, or does he still drink? How does that work?
He doesn't drink, so but yeah, he has no problem with alcohol whatsoever, which was even more of a like, holy crap, am I ever an alcoholic? Because like, he's like, well, no, to support you, like, I'm going to quit drinking. And it was so like, boom, he was done drinking. And then there was me, like, I was up every night because I kept having dreams I was drinking, waking up in cold sweats, and he just carried on. And he doesn't drink, just, I think he does it to support me, but alcohol isn't something he needs or wants or anything. So
he only did it. It sounds like he just was doing it to connect with you. He wanted to be with you. And it sounds like if you drank it sounds like you drank the way I drank. And it was like, if you want to be with me, you better drink with me.
Yeah. And it just happened. And it was just kind of, and it was so controlling of me, which as alcoholics, I know myself, I don't know about everybody, but control was a huge part of my addiction, and something in recovery I still deal with, of just kind of constantly trying to control situations and make it feel safe. And, it's just, it was a hard time, but it really became clear to me how much of a problem I had with alcohol when he was able to just, leave it. And I was envious.
Yeah. So it's interesting you talked about control, and that's definitely something that I see a lot with my clients as well, and in my life and in my work. And yet I'm finding it interesting. There's a dichotomy there, because it's like, we want so much control in so many areas of our lives. And then with money, we have often very little control, what we perceive as very little control. We kind of feel like we have this job, we make this much money, this is how things are. Why is it that people like us, people with that struggle with addiction, why is it that we have that need for control? And then why is that not manifested when it comes to money?
I think when it comes to it, like the manifestation of it, I don't think that people even relate the two. I think that that's a huge thing to do it, because I don't think that us as a society really put money and emotion together. It's a lot of just, again, it's an energy that nobody knows anything about. And there's so many emotions when it comes to money, and it's that control. And often, like with alcohol, I wanted to always kind of control how I was feeling. And it was the same thing, because you don't want to deal with anything. It's just, you want to numb out. You just want to forget about what's going on, like get absolutely hammered. And, with money, it's kind of the same thing. Like people, I've had some clients that almost go a little bit blackout when they're spending money. Like, obviously they're not like falling down and all that sort of stuff, but I don't even know how I got here. Like, I don't know how I got here. And it's just this unconscious, I drank unconsciously for years and didn't know that I had a problem. And I think a lot of people do that with money. Right. And, the one thing I found, we were watching TV the other night, and there was this commercial that came on about this family that was going on a road trip. And it was like, the kids were like, "No, Mom, do you think our car is going to make it on this road trip?" And then she turns around this ad, and it's like, "No, let's go buy this." And it was for this brand new Ford SUV. And I was like, I thought, oh my God, because there's all this media and all this stuff everywhere that obsesses about what you have to have, like you just go, it's $212 a week to buy this brand new truck. And it's just like, well, yeah, it's $212 a week, which is how much a month? And do you even have that? Yeah, I could go on about that sort of thing, but we're absolutely, like, kind of like with you with the food, it's just like, it's everywhere and marketing wise. And it's the same with money. Like, this is how you're supposed to look. This is what you're supposed to have. Like, it's not realistic.
The lies were sold.
Oh, yes.
Right? This idea that we have to have everything to be able to keep up with other people. And I know that I have struggled with that. You even mentioned loving that feeling of being voted best dressed. So that would have very easily then fed that addiction for you to continue to spend. As you said, all you spent your money on was alcohol and clothes.
All it was. Yeah.
Like, looking good was your currency. Like,
Absolutely.
looking good, looking the part, being in control, having all of the things that made you look like you were in control. That was all what was really important.
Yes. Absolutely. And I still struggle with that to date. It's just, with money, coaching, a part of my story as well is, get married, have kids, all that sort of stuff. With that comes more of a financial strain. And my husband, had an ex-wife, and, then we get into a lot of court battles. We get into child support. Like, a lot of money was flying out our door. And, and then spending, like, I can't believe how much money I spent on alcohol, like the financial chaos that in my life because of how much money I would spend on alcohol. I swear to God, I was probably spending at least $500 a week.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, easily. Yeah.
I would say the same for myself. Yeah.
Yeah, like $2,000 a month. And it probably came from a line of credit or a credit card or, I'm in my own recovery from money. And that's what I find so important to share with people is, I don't have zero debt. I don't have, I'm recovering myself. And I've been able to take charge and learn what has happened with me with money and in my recovery. And I have a good plan and I'm sticking to it and I'm so proud of it. It's really easy to fall off track, and it's just kind of connecting with yourself. And that's that spiritual part of it, right?
Mm-hmm. So you talked about the rock bottom moment with alcohol. So you didn't want your daughter seeing you drunk. She saw you drunk that first time and you were like, I got to do better. Was that it for you? That was your moment? And then you stopped drinking right then and there? Did it take some time? And then I want you to go into what is your money story. I want other people to relate to your story around money as well.
For sure. So when it comes to my bottom, it was a high bottom, I think. So there wasn't, I had a couple evenings that I went out and it was, I got so drunk and just ridiculously drunk. And I remember thinking just prior to that, I need to quit drinking, but we actually had a family holiday planned to Cuba. And then I won a trip through work to go to the Dominican. I'm like, I can't not drink on those trips. What am I talking about? And those happened in January of that year. And the drinking from the trips it honestly didn't stop. It was just absolutely crazy. And that one night when my daughter saw me, and I'll never forget, I was at home, I was acting so weird, just really disconnected, just really like my husband didn't know what the hell was going on with me. And he came home from work. I'm like, I really need to talk to you. And the look on that poor man's face, and I was like, I need to tell you that I'm an alcoholic. And the look of just sat back. He's like, oh, thank God. Oh, thank God.
Like, I thought you were divorcing me.
He thought I was cheating on him. He thought all this stuff because I was just so in my head and didn't know what to do. And that was my last time I drank. And I got to, my parents both were in AA. So, looked up an AA meeting, found a women's group and, really got turned into, that lifestyle of recovery. It was hard. It was, I think the worst part for me was, first of all, I couldn't escape anymore. Mm-hmm. I just constantly wanted to escape. But it was, everybody else is drinking. Why can't I? Totally. Then the dreams that would keep me up at night with having dreams that I was just absolutely drunk and, and then wake up and think like, oh my God, did I actually drink? Because it actually felt like you had been drinking. And I'd say that went on for like a good 6-7 months for me. Mm-hmm. But I had a really good support system in place. And from there, I love my recovery. It's, mm-hmm. I'm so immensely grateful for it. The precious things that have come into my life, I would never have. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was always mourning my life of drinking, like my friends and all those sort of people. And then somebody said to me, what you lose in recovery, you'll gain tenfold. And I was thought oh my God, when's that going to happen? Mm-hmm. And it's happening. And it's just the beautiful things that I see and the connection to myself and connection to others. And I love it.
Isn't it the best? And then the meaning that you get to create in your work, because, I've referenced this book all the time, Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, where he shares who better than the alcoholic to help other people with alcohol problems, who better than the person struggling with money that figured out a system to help people with their money situation. I mean, that's just the way that we pay things forward, and that's how we create meaning and connection in our lives. So I love that all of this has been for the greater good, as it always is with anybody watching right now, wondering if, you know, if you're thinking of getting sober, if you're wondering about what recovery looks like. It is beautiful. It is different for all of us, but no matter what, it is worth it. It is
so
absolutely worth it. Yeah. So you talked about that you were drinking, you know, the way that you were drinking to escape and to numb. Then when you quit drinking, did you find yourself spending in the same, you know, did it increase when you quit drinking? Were you kind of trying to fill the hole that was being filled with alcohol with shopping, or had you become a money coach already and you were cautioning yourself away from that? Like, how did that all look?
I think that I kept spending. I think that, and it happens, I see it a lot, is that because you're not spending money on alcohol, you're going to treat yourself to other things.
Yes.
Yeah. So that definitely within my first year of recovery, like
it feels justified. So, you know, with my work with food, people do the same thing. They're like, I'm going to eat all the brownies because I'm not drinking all the booze. And it's like, I get that need to reward yourself, but let's look at non-food rewards as well. So yes, I can see the similarities here.
Yes, it's the, you know, and it's like a lot of times I see like people going on trips and doing different things like that. Thank goodness I didn't do that. But I think, to be honest, at the time of my, when I first started to recover, I did do some spending in the first year. But then that's when I really started there was no more money to spend. I'd used all the credit. One thing that I thought at that time was that the credit card was money, you know, so like, oh, I have, you know, $1,000 that I have available on my credit card. Oh, I'm going to go and do this, and I'm going to go and do that. And it's not your money. For one, the money on your credit card is not your money. It's somebody else's money, and you're going to have to pay that back. Where I don't think some people, you know, they're so focused on getting that thing that they think is going to make them feel better. They don't think about the consequences of how that's going to, you know, affect their life. So a year into my recovery, it definitely hit me how much my spending and my alcoholism just, you know, created chaos in my life. And it was time to take some accountability for that.
Yeah, and it's really making me see the similarities in that we talk a lot with people in recovery where we, you know, if you can fast forward, if you're having that craving for that drink or that drug, and if you can just fast forward and play it out to know what's going to happen. We all know we're going to get blackout drunk. We're going to make stupid decisions. We're going to feel shitty the next day. It's all going to be worthless, and we're going to waste a lot of time and money and a day that we could have otherwise stayed sober and continued on the path of recovery. I see a lot of the similarities like you were talking about with money, where, you know, if we can just fast forward ourselves instead of spending on that thing right now, this minute that we want. And I do this with food as well. Instead of eating that cookie or brownie or cake right now, try to get through that craving, take a moment, fast forward yourself to what you really want ahead in the future, or play it out how you're going to feel after. And if you're really not going to feel well, then maybe make a different choice. And I'm really feeling that way with what you're talking about with money. If we could fast forward a little bit and remind ourselves that that credit card is not money, that there will be a bill coming in that we do have to pay at some point. Yes. So if we can, instead of in that moment where we want that, you know, item from Sephora or that new outfit, or we want to go on that trip, think about what that's going to mean to have to pay that back down the road. And I think you're so right. A lot of us forget that credit cards are not money.
Yes. And I think that also one thing that I really encourage my clients to do, and anybody to do, is when you're, you know, when you're in that moment and you think that you're going to spend money or you're going to purchase something, it was something that I learned from Meadow DeVore was, you know, keeping a little money journal, and even just a little notebook that you keep with you in your purse, and write down, like, how are you feeling in that moment? What are you trying to accomplish in that moment? What, you know, why are you feeling that need for some sort of, you know, you just are filling a hole. So, you know, what's that hole you're trying to fill? What's going on? Really connecting with yourself and being aware of what you're doing. Because again, people do it so unconsciously.
Like we do everything. We do
Absolutely.
so many things just unconsciously, subconsciously, non-consciously. We just, you know, our habits overtake us sometimes. We always buy this. Every time we pass by, we stop in and we go to Starbucks and we spend $7 every single time we're there. And we just do that thing habitually. But I think it's sounding really clear to me that you have this, you know, line in the sand that we need to draw when we are developing this new plan around money. So, all right. So keep walking us through your money story. I really want you to get down and dirty and tell us all of the details, because I think that's the way that we all connect, right? We want to know what you went through. And when we see that you've been able to recover your life in as far as money, and of course with the addiction goes, it gives us the hope and the promise that maybe we can do it too.
For sure. Yeah, because when it comes to like when I left and there was the big, when I left home and, you know, my student loan that I was just, you know, spending on so much other than school. I remember I was on probation from the college I went to because I wasn't going to school. Yeah, it was ridiculous. But just, I think that at that time, I think it turned out to be like an $18,000 debt just for going to a year and a half of school because I just spent it on whatever.
Yeah.
So the spending kept happening, but when it really peaked for me was when I lived in Australia. So I had a student loan, that $18,000 that I was needing to you know, pay off. I was 24 years old. And I got 2 credit cards before I left Canada. And holy crap, did I spend so much money in that country. I was taking cash advances off my credit cards because again, it was my money. And it funded, oh my God, the clothes that I bought, the alcohol that I did, the trips that I went on. It was like this life of luxury that was a complete facade because I was, you know, when I came back from Australia, I think that I was probably, including my student loan, I think I was probably about $34,000, $35,000 in debt. And that was credit card and that was the student loan. So then you come home and, you know, back to reality. And then that's when the collectors started calling and all that sort of stuff. And
you're back home living with your parents again, right?
I was living with my parents again. Yeah, I was 25 years old.
And so they're getting those they know that these phone calls are coming in.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I ended up getting a job, and ironically enough, that's when I started my career in the financial industry. I started working for a bank here in Canada, and yeah, and the spending just kind of continued. Because I was working, I would just I did have my student loan went into collection. My student loan went into what's called like a written off account. So a written off account is like they sold it to a collection agency. Then the collection agency then tries to get the money. They kind of negotiate a payment, and my parents bailed me out for that one. And yeah, it was, but then again, then that written off record is on your credit bureau for, you know, almost 7 years. So it took a while to really rebuild my credit. I had a branch manager probably 3 years into my career. So I would have been probably 26, 27. And with those written off accounts, and I had started some, you know, healthy things to be able to, you know, show that I was trying to pay stuff off. And I started putting money into an RSP and that sort of thing. So he really fought for me to consolidate my debt and really get it all under control. I was commuting, and he was able to consolidate for me to also get a new car because my car was breaking down. So it was really, you know, they talk about it when you're working in the financial industry, but really the character around money. And he was able to really just, you know, tie everything into a bow for me and help me out that way. You'd think that would have taught me, but no, I just kept screwing up money. And yeah, it just continued from there, and now had a family and was, I was 26 when me and my husband got together.
Mm-hmm.
And my girls were 4 and 6. So again, there was a lot of court battles and stuff, and, tens and 20s and 30s thousands of dollars flying out the door. And we were fighting for our kids. So we just kept doing it. And yeah, we got ourselves into quite a pickle.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Okay. So getting yourselves into quite a pickle and then pulling yourselves out the other side. How does that look? And are you and your husband openly communicating about money at this point? Does he feel like you spend too much? Is there any like arguing around money in your marriage?
I think that we openly communicate about it. Me and my husband are so open. And I think that's the gift that recovery has really given us, is really having that open communication. I'm the one who does absolutely everything with the money, and my husband's just sort of like, if you asked him to go into the bank and pay a bill, he'd freak out. He'd be like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. But like I'll say, like, you need to be like in tune with what's happening with our money. And we'll have meetings, and I'll kind of show him, this is how much we paid off on this, because, luckily, being in the financial industry and having really good habits that taught me, like to start paying down my debt and starting to invest and that sort of thing. I was able again to consolidate everything. Unfortunately, our house had to come into play with that. So refinancing our home to pay off debt. So there's good debt and there's bad debt and that sort of thing. But I'm so grateful that I was able to do that. But, this is how much we paid off on our line of credit now. And this is kind of where our picture sits. And this is how much are in retirement. And yeah, we have regular meetings about it.
Mm-hmm. I think that's so key. I think that couples really do need to have conversations. And I mean, I'm sure if push came to shove, your husband would be able to go to the bank and pay a bill. But I do find it fascinating that usually that does tend to happen in a relationship where one of the parties is really the one that does all of the stuff with money. That was in my parents' relationship. We didn't talk about money. There was really no conversation about money at all. I just knew that there was always enough money. It was always around. And I also kind of knew that it was a private kind of thing, like between them. So because it wasn't really talked about, I really didn't have a really solid foundation. And yet my father was in the financial services business. So it is amazing how the way that our families communicate about money really does dictate how we feel comfortable communicating about money down the road.
Absolutely.
So how do you feel about your money picture now, and how does, recovery and coaching and money recovery play into what's going on in your life? Is that everything that you're doing in your life right now?
Yeah, I would say that I feel great about my financial picture.
Awesome.
When I first went to think about being a money coach, so I went on a She Recovers retreat.
Yes.
And I was there, and everybody kept asking me what I did for a job. And this would have been 2 years ago. And I've been sober 4 years now. So it was in my second year of recovery. And I went, and I was a financial advisor, and, everybody like, what do you do for work? I'm like, oh God, I hate my job. It was just because it was just not fulfilling me. Like, I wasn't getting to help people with money. I was, able to lend them money and that sort of thing. I wasn't able to get down to the root of it. And so, yeah, it was, I just had this moment where it was kind of like, well, maybe we should look into money coaching, is what Dawn had said to me. And, from there, it was born, and it was just kind of like, yeah, why don't I do that? And I said, but I'm not exactly like in the best financial position of where I want to be. And somebody said to me, well, sometimes you need to teach what you need to learn. And it was like, boom, okay, yeah, I need to, and because I was working very, like at that point, I was accountable for my money. I was working on it. But then before I was even able to get my certification, I had to have money coaching myself. So I went through the core process. I went through absolutely everything, and, and then to do the recovery coaching, and it ties it all together so beautifully. So my money story is a work in progress. It's never going to be perfect. But now I manifest money. I have a positive attitude about money. I don't hate money. I'm so grateful for money. I have a positive attitude about it. And yeah, I'm very comfortable in my money story right now.
Oh, I'm so happy that you are, because I know that's a place to get to. And, I've struggled with my money story over the years. I've had a lot of limiting beliefs around money,
Yeah.
about deservingness and worthiness around money. And I don't deserve to be paid that. And I don't deserve to have those nice things that other people have. And it's taken being in recovery from alcohol to really dive deep into other areas of my life. And money is certainly one of those. Like I said, my family story was just, we don't talk about money. So I didn't really have a very solid foundation around it. So it's been really important for me to do that work. And I don't have a perfect story either. I still, manage debt and pay it off, but I definitely feel better about money as well. And I love that feeling of being grateful for it, for seeing it as a transfer of energy. I mean, that's really all money is, like a unit of energy. And we just have to, we can decide how we want to feel around it. But you're so right when you talk about that fight or flight feeling. Like it's usually that one or the other. Either we hate it, or we want more of it, or we don't have enough. And we need to really get closer to real, honest feelings around money and see where it's all coming from. So I think it's important that you do work with your clients, going right back to the root. What were those messages early on? And then helping us to get a better and healthier picture around money.
Exactly.
So, if we are somebody who, is struggling, let's say we have debt, we have a mortgage, we have car payments, we've got kids, we're, the usual families out there, let's say, or just anybody. So let's say I'm single and let's just say it doesn't matter what kind of person we are. What would you say is the number one first thing that we need to do if we want to get a little bit more clear on our money story?
I think it's really what you need to do is, again, looking back and kind of seeing what you were taught with as a kid. I think that's such a huge key to do with that. One thing that, because everybody wants to, they're like, okay, yeah, we can deal with what happened with me as a kid. I believe that to be such a huge part of it. But some people want to know, like, okay, what am I supposed to be doing with my debt? Like, what do I do?
Yes.
Because there's that, it's just that immediate need that people want to know. I would write down, so pen to paper, really, like what debts do I have, what assets do I have, what interest rates are they at, that sort of thing. I would print off 3 months of statements from your bank account, your credit cards, whatever you're using to spend money. I would print off 3 months of that, and within, like, how much did you spend on food every month, like how much did you spend on entertainment, how much is your mortgage payment, and just really kind of look at your cash flow. Which I think even that can be so daunting for people. But I think it's the first step to really feeling like you have a little bit of control. Because if you don't understand where you're at financially, it's hard to make a plan. So I could tell you, oh, you need to pay off that credit card first, but there might be other avenues we can look at. But really kind of like, holy crap, I'm spending like $400 a month on Tim Hortons coffee, like some people, or like you say, you stop at Starbucks and you spend $7. Oh my God, it just goes on and on and on. And once you kind of have those numbers in front of you, you have this reality check. And then, consolidation, I think is a great idea. But, some people are in a financial state where unfortunately people might not help them with that. So, there's a few different tools I use for that, but I think really getting a grasp, paper to pen, on what your financial picture actually looks like, because you need to really be accountable for that before you can kind of move on.
I would agree. I think that's a really important step, because I feel like it requires us to get really honest, because I think a lot of us can justify away, well, I spend a couple of bucks here every day, or I really like this vehicle. Like, I need to have this vehicle and it costs this much in a payment every month. But I think it really does, when we put pen to paper, it creates that honesty where you have to look at what you're actually spending and then decide. So then, so now that we've put pen to paper, what do we find? What do we do that now?
Well, I think it all depends on what you come up with. So like, I think that there's a lot of excessive spending on things you don't actually need. So that's going to be your first thing that you want to do. You want to get rid of that, just buying things because frivolously spending, you just got to stop that, especially if you're going into debt all the time. Really just looking at, like I see, and even for myself, we were paying a ton in cable and that sort of thing. And, there's Netflix these days. There's different things where you can pay $10 a month instead of like $250. And, just really for families, it's, the kids' activities, things like that, really just, and budgeting. Like that's, again, once we get into what your financial picture looks like, and then just really, oh my God, I'm spending too much on that. What's my budget now going to be going forward, for this? How much are we going to spend per month on food, per week? I love per week. Because then it makes it, months sometimes gets really overwhelming. So I have a little whiteboard that says like what our pay comes in at that time, what our debts are going to be at that time. This is the money I have for this. This is the money I have for that.
Again, just being really honest about how much money is coming in and how much money is going out. And so I guess the deal is, if we aren't willing to curb those, that spending on frivolous items, then I guess we have to get another job. Like we have to find a way to bring more money in, right? If we're not willing to make those changes. I mean, it's just a matter of dollars, and it's a matter of numbers.
Yes. And I think the one thing that I come across a lot is that people think that just because they want to look at their money, you can just snap your fingers and everything's going to be okay. Unfortunately, there's a real process to that. Like, especially if you have years of credit card debt and, paying that off, like, it's kind of like you say, you need to get another job. Like it's, there's a money coach that I follow, and she does speaking around the country a lot. And, kids with student loans are going to be like, well, how do I pay off my student loans? And it comes down to like, you got to make money. You need to pick up a couple jobs. Like debt isn't going to disappear. It's just, and take care of it when you're young and, kind of get that healthy spending. Because sometimes, especially like I just turned 41 and, at least I feel like I have my money story under control, but, there's people who are so much older that just have, it's just still going and going and going. Because they don't want to look at it.
Exactly. And it's so insidious, right? Because as you talked about getting a couple of credit cards before going to Australia, and you'd gotten a student loan, I walked on campus at 19 years of age. I walked on campus and there they were, just handing out credit cards like sticks of gum. And right out of the gate, I grabbed a credit card, my first one, with a $500 balance. And I'm pretty sure it took me less than probably 2 months to rack it up with going to the pubs every night. Because like you were talking about, I felt like it was money. I felt like this was, I felt like that was the deal. And so I had to do the same thing. I had to get my dad to bail me out. And he was like, never do that again. What are you thinking? If you don't have the money to pay it off, that's not free money. And I'm quite sure that I racked it up again and continued to do that with credit cards. So I still had that feeling for a long time that I deserved things, that if I didn't have the money to pay for them, but I had room on a credit card, that I deserved that I was going to go on that little trip, or I was going to buy that outfit or that makeup or whatever. So yeah, I do think that really, really, like with everything, I think awareness is always the first step, and really getting clear as to what our beliefs are around money, writing those beliefs down, and then getting really clear on the dollars and cents, on really talking about what do we spend every month and what money comes in every month, and where is there a shortfall here, and how can we change? How can we curb some of that spending that's unnecessary?
Yes, exactly. One daily thing that I do as well, kind of in my morning, in recovery, I do my meditation and, my self-care that way. Every day I write down what I'm grateful for with money. And something that, because you need to manifest things in our lives, right? So if we have a negative attitude, again, it's that getting back to changing your way of thinking. So I start every day with how I'm grateful for money, what my goals are with money, and just being really crystal clear on that.
I love that. Can you give us an example of something you would be grateful for with money?
I think, I guess like recently, my mother-in-law had passed away, and I had to be off work for a little while, just dealing with grief and that sort of thing. And, it was hard because I was panicked about not being at work. So it was, you know, that unknown of like, am I going to get short-term disability? Like what's going to kind of happen with that? And I really just, you know, every day was grateful that I had the time to heal, and was grateful that I did have a job that I could go back to, and really just, I know that I will get approved for my short-term disability, and just really believing what was going to be happening. And I did get approved, and so like we weren't in any sort of financial crisis because of it, but you know, stuff like that's scary. So it's just kind of talking your way through anything that's kind of stressful about money in that time, really just being aware of it, manifesting what you want to happen, because that's with anything in life, right? Like if you want something to happen, you got to make it happen.
You're speaking my language. I was just talking to somebody else about the law of attraction, and that's just how it works. That is how it works. If you want something to happen, you got to think about that thing. You've got to go after it. You got to make decisions. And same with money. I think I think it can be such a powerful tool when we're saving, when it can be maybe that number that you have in your mind. Like, I want to save $10,000 to put towards, you know, like, or $5,000 or $1,000 or whatever it is, to put towards something or to invest somewhere. So what would you suggest as a financial planner, as a money coach? Where should we be investing? Let's say we realize that the debt thing is going on. We've figured out a way to consolidate our debt. We've contacted our credit card companies. We've asked them to lower our interest rates maybe, and we've consolidated debt with a debt consolidation company. Then what would sort of be your next steps with people that you think would really help them paint a better, healthier picture of their money story?
I think that making sure that they're putting some money every month into some sort of savings account, whatever that be. Here in Canada, I definitely recommend like a tax-free savings account or something like that. Money that they can still have access to just in case of an emergency, because you need to have an emergency backup. If something happens to you or your family, you don't want to pull from that credit card. You know, it's just being prepared for, that time, that rainy day when something happens and you need to, get some access to some money. That's where I would first, really encourage people to put some money into. And then you have your retirement, right? So many people these days are retiring without any sort of pension or anything like that. So again, we're looking kind of at where people are at, because some people are self-employed, some people already have a pension, some don't. If they have people that will match their pensions, that's number one. And, really kind of taking a look at that. Sometimes RSPs aren't the best thing to go into when you're first starting your recovery in money, because, I have found that if people put money into RSPs and all of a sudden they need a rainy day fund, they'll pull out of their RSPs, then you have the taxes, counts as income. It's just really, that can become a vicious circle that, and I did it back when I was first trying to get myself, and it just that sometimes that's not the right thing to be doing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But really having that emergency fund is so huge. And then really looking just kind of, and if you want to go on a trip, like I'm big on having, my vision board of what I want to have, and say, you want to be going on a trip, like how are you going to get to go on that trip? How much do you have to save every month? Even putting that number beside a picture of where you want to go. Like, so I want to save like $1,500 in 1 year to go to Mexico. Really having that plan in place on how you're going to save that. And then just the manifestation of putting it on your vision board, I think is so huge. And just putting that plan up there and just sticking to it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of vision boarding as well. In fact, I use sort of, it's like a notebook, and I'll have a page for trips or travel. And then I have another page for health and wellness. And then I like it that way, as opposed to having vision boards all over my home. But however people want to do it, I think it's such a great way to go about manifesting the things that you want in your life, visually displaying those things in your home in a place that you're going to look and see on a daily basis. And sooner or later, that thing is going to come to be. It's just the way that the law of attraction works. We put it out there, what we want, and then we work towards getting it. And sooner or later, you're going to get it. So would you then recommend, Linda, for anybody who's watching right now who does have debt, does it mean then that we can absolutely not spend on anything that is non-essential? Is that part of your advice, that you get really strict on, if we don't need it, we don't get to spend it? If we've got $30,000 worth of credit card debt or $100,000 worth of debt. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that there needs to be a little bit of wiggle room there, only because with a money story, like going from one extreme to the other may not be the best thing that's going to work. Because I feel like every once in a while you need to, treat yourself, or just kind of, and I don't mean treat yourself by going on a trip, or do you know what I mean? Like, that's just my big thing that I love to treat myself with, is bubble bath. Like I love going into Home Sense or Winners or somewhere that has beautiful bubble bath, and it's something very small, but it's something that I think is really important to just kind of, but really setting that as part of your financial plan. Like this week I have $30 to spend on something special for myself, and really, kind of making what you get to be worth it and that you're going to enjoy. And once you stop that manic spending on just absolutely everything, you're going to actually enjoy what you buy. Like it's just, you're going to be in that moment. You're going to be present. You're not going to be trying to be doing all this sort of, filling voids of any sort, to be like, oh my God, like I can't wait to use my bubble bath.
I really like that simple little treat for ourselves. It makes me think of, I love to buy books. So I love when I can dive into a book and just kind of get lost in it. And I typically would just go and buy a book. But now I think I will think about it more so as self-care, and a way that I'm treating myself to something that's in and around $20. Which is still a bit of spending, but it's not going to break the bank. And it's going to remind me that I'm still enjoying those little things while I am also paying down debt and making sure that I do what I need to do on the other side of that coin.
Yes, because if we're so rigid and not enjoying anything, I think that can then just go straight back to where you were before, because then it's just that you're starving for something else. And it's just, that would be a circle I wouldn't always recommend to people.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It again kind of comes around to the way we deal with addiction, right? If we, at the beginning, we feel like, oh my gosh, how can I never, ever, ever drink again? And we feel that panic around it until we kind of release it and realize that it's a beautiful thing. It's a giving over. And it's, there's so much power in releasing that. I think that's really important, especially certainly for me in my recovery, just giving that over.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, what other tips would you give us out here that are saying, oh my gosh, okay, my money story is not perfect. I've got a lot of debt. I've got a lot of these things. Are there any other last tips that you want to share with us, things that you think are really impactful?
One thing that I would say is your self-worth is not attached to your net worth. That is something that I really believe that, your debt, once you get on the, your recovery within your debt isn't who you are. Right. So it's, it's a situation that you had put yourself in. You're really starting on your recovery of how you got there, but your debt doesn't, your self-worth isn't attached to your debt. And I think that so many people think that's going to take work. That's going to take like some self-awareness. That's going to take, it can get very uncomfortable in that part of kind of, okay, yeah, I have that debt, but it's not who I am. And just really growing within your recovery to not attach that to who you are as a person. That's where the shame and the guilt and everything, and that's where the kind of changing your attitude. And sometimes when I say what I'm grateful for with money is that I'm grateful for my debt, because it showed me how much I can grow. It showed me what I'm possible with my money story, and how I can really take my power back and not let my line of credit rule me, for me to rule my line of credit.
Oh my gosh. It's such a big topic, right? Because we do feel so much shame around it. We feel embarrassment and shame because we don't earn enough money. And then we feel that kind of shame and embarrassment if we don't have all the things that make it appear that we have this great life, and that we're all trying to keep up with our friends, the life that they have. And the shame, guilt, and embarrassment around money, I imagine that it really is what keeps so many of us mired in the cycle of spending and debt.
Yes, and it's kind of like with recovery, drinking and drugging and stuff was just a symptom of some really underlying behaviors and, internal beliefs and core beliefs within yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Money's the same thing, same shit, different pile. You're dealing with the exact same feelings. You're dealing with the exact same emotions that you were when you're drinking. And, they say that, you have so many isms, right? You have the alcoholism, you have, like you get into like eating disorders and that sort of thing. And money is the exact same thing. And I think we're in such a time in society right now and in the world, it's such an important message, like money coaching and financial recovery. There is such a need for it right now. And just for really people to really connect with their money and their money story and really getting some financial success, because almost every person I talk to, they don't feel successful in finances at all.
And I think that's fascinating, because I imagine you talk to people who are earning all sorts of different dollar values, per year. And yet it doesn't matter how much you're earning. Just like alcoholism and addiction doesn't discriminate, likely these feelings don't discriminate between people who earn $30,000 a year versus people who earn $430,000 a year.
Absolutely. And, and the people who are earning a lot of money, because you see the flip side of people in debt, but then you see the flip side of people who make a lot of money and just hang on to it and have so much kind of greed and power attached to it. And, that's the whole other side of the spectrum, but there's some recovery that needs to be done there too, right? Like there's just that need of just having some sort of safe place. And some people see that with money, and that's a whole other side of the spectrum. And with financial recovery and people in recovery, we're usually dealing with debt and the financial chaos our addictions have brought us. But yeah, there's that other side to it too, right? People are power hungry sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'm really glad you touched on that, because I agree that won't likely be most of the people's story that are watching this, but it's certainly going to be for some. There's no doubt. So certainly I think that most of us are sitting here with debt and we're thinking, how do we get out of it and what are the right steps to take? And thank you so much for helping us to walk through what those steps are. But no matter who you are, no matter what your money story or your money situation is, there is a real power in working with a money coach like Linda, who can really help you navigate those waters and come up with a really solid plan to take you from where you are now to where you want to go. But I think that key, like Linda keeps saying, is getting clear on what the money story is for us individually, really getting down pen to paper and writing down our feelings around money. Because I think that's an exercise that, I know I've done it because I've worked on a few of these things, but it's not something that I've done regularly. And I don't think it's something that most of us are done. And like you said, it is not taught in school, even though it absolutely should be.
Absolutely. Yes. I actually am looking into going into some schools and sort of starting some education that way, because I have people, again, still working as an advisor, I have people walk into my office and they have no idea like what even a bank account, how to use a bank card, like all this sort of stuff. And that's just really the basics of it. And yeah, it's just that kind of feeling about money and celebrating it. And yeah, it's something that needs to be taught, that's for sure.
It really is. Money is what really makes the world go around. It is the machine. It is at the heart of the machine. And to think that we are never taught how this machine runs, it's crazy.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. My world, it's the food world. And I think in schools, it's shocking to me that we got rid of home economics or life skills and teaching our young people how to actually put a meal on the table or to help them to understand what nutrients are. It's frightening to me sometimes, where I feel like we really now have to just take matters into our own hands. And I guess there's a lot of power to that as well. If we aren't being taught these things in the school system, okay, then what do we need to do in order to learn the things, those essential skills? And what I love is that you are in the world being able to really help out and teach us from the money side. But I think it's so amazing that you're really targeting people in recovery, because you get it. You've been there. You know that we have totally fucked up our finances. We've completely screwed things up. And for so many of us, I know that you must hear that story. Most people in recovery are not saying, yeah, money's great. No problem there.
Well, if they are, they may be in denial about some things.
And that's a whole other, that's when your recovery coaching comes in. I love it. Well, Linda Parmar, I would love to know, what are, other than bubble baths and counting all your money, I'm kidding, what other tools are your favorites in recovery?
Gratitude. I am really big on the body, mind, spirit connection. Love my yoga. Self-care includes a weekly class of yin yoga. So really getting into our system that way. I meditate every morning. I set daily goals within this journal that I have. I just really love my morning routine. And just really, I connect with myself a couple times during the day, the breathing, just really connecting with my breath that way and being present. And just having that connection with people in our community. And oh my God, I can't believe kind of even, the online community and how much we get from that. It's so nice to actually speak to you in person. We've chatted online so many times, but it's just the community that supports you, and really get involved in that, because there's so many people in recovery that want to help.
It's so true. And I also imagine, adding to your list, creating meaningful work for yourself has clearly been something that's been so powerful for you in your recovery. And it's awesome, because we need you. Many of us need you.
Thank you. It's exciting.
Yeah. What is the best thing about being sober?
Oh, my relationships. Yeah, I would never be where I am today with my husband. I treasure my relationship with my girls so much, my family, my people in my community. I would say that my relationships are the best thing to do with my recovery. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they fill my cup up so much. They make my heart so big. And I'm just a better person for the people in my life who support me during my journey.
That's so beautiful. I love that. I have to ask, are your parents still with us?
Yes.
And are they still doing well in recovery?
Still doing well in recovery.
Oh, what a great family. I imagine family dinners must just, because so many of us have to navigate the wine bottles on the table at family dinners, because most of my family, all of my family still drink. So, and I know so many people where that is the story. So imagining your dinner tables with no alcohol, or do your daughters drink at all?
No.
I know. So how fun is that? Like La Croix and SodaStream and coffee. And I don't know.
Yeah, when it's not even a thought, it's just our normal. Yeah. So and I guess that's something, I guess I take that for granted a little bit, because that's my world. But it would be hard if there was a bunch of wine at the table and that sort of thing. But it's, and my dad, so he's got 5 siblings and all of them are in recovery.
Wow.
Yeah, it runs deep in my blood.
Seriously, but you've all recovered.
Yes. So I think that's the most beautiful thing, is when you have, your extended family. So, I've been used to recovery for so long because my parents are in long-term recovery now. But it's when you're at different family events or situations where there used to be so much alcohol and so much drama, and it's just, everybody's so happy and everybody's so content, and it's just the most beautiful thing.
Oh, I love that. And I love that when you talked about being so grateful for your relationships. I imagine that those include these family members where you really are connecting on different levels. It's just different when people aren't getting drunk all the time.
Absolutely. Yes, I don't miss dealing with that all the time.
Oh, for sure.
No. Yeah.
My last question for you, Linda. What do you know for sure?
What do I know for sure? I know for sure, and I'm going to go back to the fact that your self-worth is not attached to your financial picture. You're an amazing person. Just, you know, if you owe money and you are in debt and your life experience so far has brought you here, doesn't mean you're a horrible person. You're a beautiful person that needs to share your light with the world, and I will help you find that. So I found that within myself. I have my sparkle that just I love to share with people, and just because I have debt doesn't mean it's attached to me.
I have to tell you how much I admire you for being able to share with us as a money coach, as someone who teaches this stuff, that you too are dealing with it. You're not hiding away from that. You're not shying away from it. You're saying, I'm at this thing too, and I can help you to do it because I'm helping myself to do it. I just find it brave and courageous and real. And I really hope that, that a lot of people Google your name right now and go to your website right now and check you out and take the quiz and then decide if they want to move further with you, because you are the real deal. I have loved this conversation with you. I want to talk about money again with you. I really am excited about what's going on in your life and in your business. And I'm just so excited that we are connected in the way that we are in the recovery world as well. Thank you so much for today.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Sarah.
Thank you. To get access to all of the free videos and interviews, visit sobrietystartshere.com.